The Cincinnati Bengals renegotiated Cordell Volson's contract a week ago. That means he's going to be on the team. That means your guard room is pretty much set. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Jake Liscow. He's James Rapien, and we've been Locked On Bengals on this podcast since 2016, covering the Cincinnati Bengals for you daily with the best news and analysis you're going to find on a daily basis on the internet. You can subscribe to the show on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts, and that makes it really easy to join the many Bengals fans out there who are everydayers and don't miss an episode of Locked On Bengals. And even better, you can make Locked On Bengals your first listen. Get into those good listening habits this offseason in preparation for the regular season. Today, James, we've got three topics to get through. Cordell Volson renegotiates his contract. That all but guarantees he will be on the team in 2025. The Bengals hired two scouts to go with that scouting analytics staffer they added last week, and Olympic flag football will feature NFL players. Joe Burrow gets his wish, but will Joe Burrow be the Bengals representative on that flag football team? We'll get to that later in the show. We'll start with Cordell Volson. Renegotiated contract. James, we don't have the details here yet. In fact, the only reason that this is a known issue is that it was posted on Bengals.com/transactions. There's been little to no reporting around this topic, and the only way you would know is if you read the transaction wire every day. And we don't know anything else specifically yet, except that if they did this in line with the renegotiations for Zach Moss and Geno Stone, it's almost certainly a pay cut for Cordell Volson. Maybe there's small guarantees attached to it, and very likely it significantly increases the chances that Cordell Volson is on the roster this year.
It does. And I think Cordell, roster lock it up. He's going to be here, because the only reason, if you're Cordell Volson, to take the pay cut is if it brings you some stability. A year two work with Scott Peters, who, by the way, a veteran told me how awesome, was just gushing about how awesome Scott Peters is. And so you can guess out of a few, I would imagine, because it was an offensive lineman. The point is they like him. And so I do think that could be a factor. But the other factor here is Cordell Volson wants to give himself some security. And so I think you do this. You get this out of the way. The first team, second team stuff, I know someone saw, multiple Bengals fans saw a video I posted from Tuesday's practice, and we're like, oh, well, Cody Ford's with the first team and Dylan Fairchild. It's still early for that. Like, yeah, that's true. But that doesn't mean that that's the depth chart necessarily. I mean, they're not doing anything. So I think that what they probably said is, hey, Cordell, you're going to have a shot to compete here at the left guard spot and with Dylan Fairchild. And who knows, maybe we see a little Cordell Volson at right guard as well. I don't know. I don't think that that's crazy and something that they won't do if they need to. So regardless, though, yes, we don't have the terms. We don't know what kind of pay cut it is, but certainly it's a pay decrease to give him some stability to stay in town for his fourth NFL season.
And you may be wondering, why is a pay decrease necessary for a player on the fourth year of his rookie deal in Cordell Volson, a mid-round pick? It's not like those contracts are typically very large, but due to his playing time, Cordell Volson earned performance-based payment escalators, and his base salary for this year was over $3 million. So I think it was like a $3.8 million cap hit for Cordell Volson this year. And that's just due to the fact that he played a ton in the last few years. These performance pay escalators aren't based on anything in this case to do with actual player performance. It's just, did you play? And as an offensive lineman, he played the maximum amount of snaps for these performance-based pay escalators. And so he got a pretty hefty raise in year four, which made him a cut candidate in the first place. If he was still just making $1 million this year, maybe $1.2 million this year, we wouldn't be talking about him as a cut candidate, because that's totally fine money to be paying a potential backup guard. But once you get to closer to $4 million for a guy who isn't going to be starting for you, that's why we've talked about Cordell Volson throughout this process as a potential cut candidate. Now, does it make sense to reduce Cordell Volson's pay and keep him around as a backup player. They really like his demeanor. They really like the way he approaches the game. They really like his work ethic, the character, all of those things in the building. Cordell Volson has been a coach's favorite for a long time, really for his entire tenure in Cincinnati. Yeah. But the alternative could have been hypothetically, well, we saved money on Geno Stone. We saved money on Zach Moss. Now we could potentially entirely move on from Cordell Volson's contract, save a bunch more money against the cap, and go get Brandon Sheriff. That would be a Madden level alternative. I would describe it as, because it's not quite that simple. It's never quite that simple, but maybe it's not even quite Madden land either. That is a realistic option that the team had throughout the offseason, not just now, not just with Brandon Sheriff, but even when there were other younger guards available earlier in free agency, this option was available to them with Cordell Volson. Obviously, they opted to wait to see how the draft would play out and who they'd be able to add and when through the draft. Volson still takes a pay cut. And then the question is, first, should they have done it the other way? Second, what are they doing with the money now? They've reduced the pay of 3 players on the roster, and we saw them previously reduce Joe Mixon's pay and then turn around and not spend that money. They just got more money. Would like to see them spend that money this time around. So those are the 2 questions I have following the understanding of this Cordell Volson contract renegotiation.
Yeah, that's why you think of Cordell Volson for $3.6 million, and it's like, well, that's an expensive backup. Whatever they renegotiated, it's going to feel much better. But if you don't use that money, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't make you better in 2025. And that's the business they should be in. That's why that first scenario that you played out and you said is so appealing to probably everyone watching and listening. They're like, oh yeah, Brandon Sheriff, if you could get him, as you were saying that, I'm like, man, could you just get Will Hernandez for Cordell Volson money? Because he looks at it and says, oh, I'm going to start there. Look at that guard room. Got a rookie out of Georgia, 81st overall. I can beat him coming off of an ACL, or I can beat out Lucas Patrick and Cody Ford. What are you talking about? Of course I can do that. Like, maybe that's the difference. Maybe it's that simple. Cordell Volson for less money, or at that cap hit, that 3.8, 3.6 range, Will Hernandez. And if it was that, I think everyone would pick Will Hernandez, and the Bengals wouldn't. And I do agree about the coach's favorite element of it. And I don't, by the way, when we say that, it doesn't mean like, oh, well, you're getting treated in a different way. It's because he shows up, works hard every day, and shuts up, and he does what he needs to do. And that is valuable. Just think about it. Everyone's eyeing Jermaine Burton and wondering about it. Like, that is valuable. And so for a guy that does all of those things, and you see the potential, and I do think that they still see the potential in Cordell. It's like, all right, well, if we can bring him back at a lesser number, it's worth it. It's worth to go down this path. And the reason we brought in Scott Peters is because we really believe that he's going to be able to maximize what we have in the offensive line room. We'll see. I was bullish on Cordell, the player. Love the person, but bullish on Cordell, the player, up until this past season. And I think that's how the coaching staff kind of felt. That's how he kind of fell out of the starting lineup, all of those things. But as a backup, you can do much worse. And so I get it. If they weren't going to make another move, and I don't think they were, we talked about it earlier this week, and now we've mentioned it on every show this week, at least I have. If they weren't going to add a Will Hernandez or go after a Brandon Sheriff or anything, then okay, keep Cordell around at a lesser number. Now, to your point, use the money, please. Safety, even though Zach didn't sound like, and could be a full topic, it didn't sound like he was, they were planning on using that safety money when asked about it on Tuesday.
Yeah. I will point out a couple of other things here before we move on to our next topic. First, Will Hernandez still out there. This is a curious player to still be available, even if he is coming off the injury. Maybe teams are just waiting to see how he plays coming off the injury and want to get him in for a workout. Maybe he'll join a team at training camp. But much like the cornerback, who's Asante Samuel Jr., who's still out there dealing with an injury, teams are waiting to see the recovery there. It could be as simple as that for Will Hernandez. The other thing here is, why are we just talking about it today when the transaction log said this happened on May 14th? I'll also point out that the renegotiated contract for Geno Stone is listed here as May 1st. That news didn't come out. I don't think that was reported until May 5th. I think there was a bit of a lag on the renegotiation of Zach Moss's contract as well. So these deals aren't announced by agents. That's not getting to national media. They're not telling, hey, Adam Schefter, Zach Moss just took a pay cut. Geno Stone just took a pay cut. So that's why
It's
that's
quiet.
not getting to the media sooner. You have to really be paying attention for this stuff.
Yep.
And Cordell Volson, I don't even know when it went on the Bengals website either. And that's the only real evidence of it that we have so far. It's on the Bengals transaction list. So coming up next, James, let's get into the Bengals' 2 new scouts. The Bengals had a couple of scouts to replace
That's where the money
Christian
went.
Sarkisian. We'll get to that topic coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the place you need to go. It's the place the Bengals certainly go when they're looking for scouts. I know Trey LaBounty was on LinkedIn, made the announcement that he joined the Bengals on LinkedIn. And whether you're a billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar business like the Cincinnati Bengals or a small business owner, LinkedIn is here for you. It's going to make life easier when you're looking to fill a job, fill a role. It's pretty simple. LinkedIn Jobs clocks in when you clock out, and you have to worry about a ton as a small business owner. And that's why you can post your job, and LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and quickly get your job in front of the right people. And pro tip, add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. I wonder if the Bengals did that, Jake. That would be interesting if they did. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. So like I said, small businesses, if you're looking for someone, you got to get the LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
The Bengals added 2 scouts in the wake of Christian Sarkisian's departure. We were talking about whether or not they would replace Sarkisian's role in the building, and they did. We were mostly tongue-in-cheek about that. It should not be surprising to anyone that the Bengals went out and made these moves. They add Josh Hinch, who most recently worked with the New England Patriots, and they add Tyler, got to get his last name, Tyler Ramsey, who previously worked with the Panthers and the Seahawks. These are less experienced scouts than Christian Sarkisian was by the time that he was done with Cincinnati, certainly. But filling a similar role in the case of Josh Hinch in particular, who worked the Southeast as an area scout for the New England Patriots, another area, one area that Christian Sarkisian was responsible for. What do you think here, James? The Bengals had 2 scouts to replace Sarkisian.
I like it. It means +1. Now, that doesn't mean that you're excited that Christian Sarkisian went out the door. Obviously, super qualified. He's literally a general manager now. And all of these college programs are going to hire GMs. I think that's where it's going with NIL and everything that's involved there. But when you look at the Bengals and in the scouting department as a whole, what's the main gripe? Like literally, the moment Christian Sarkisian went out the door, it's like, all right, well, are they going to replace him? And you should have to replace your area scout. And so not only did they do that, but they hired Trey LaBounty, who we talked about already on a previous show. But I think he is part of this because not only did they say, all right, well, Christian's out, we're going to bring in 2 scouts and someone that was literally an area scout for the Patriots, but we're going to go in multiple teams for that matter, but we're going to go the analytics route as well. And so the numbers are there. I mean, they're adding 2 different guys, 2 different members of their front office. And so hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps with scouting from an analytical standpoint. Hopefully that helps with scouting from a travel standpoint and how hectic it can be. I get it. I understand what they say about the smaller scouting department. It's how we like it. We like the coaches being involved. I get it. And I think a lot of these teams do have bloated scouting staffs. You don't need as many as some of these teams have. I still think you probably need a few more people in the room than the Bengals have at times. And so I think there's a happy medium there. So the fact that they're adding two different scouts here to replace one, and then you also bolster your analytics side as well by literally doubling your analytics department. That's big news, man. That's where that Cordell Volson money went. Let's go. That's where it went. Geno Stone, they said, hey, take a pay cut. Zach Moss, take a pay cut. We have a scouting department now. All these guys together are making, a couple $100,000, but still.
A fraction of the pay cuts. And just to be clear, this was reported initially by Neil Stratton of InsideTheLeague.com, where he reports on agency-related stuff and scouting-related movement. And John Sheeran did a really good job of digging into, and I don't know if you did this as well, James, but I know that John Sheeran did a great job of digging into the experience for the couple of new scouts for the Bengals in Hinch and Ramsey, and what they were doing before the southeast area for Hinch. Previous work experience includes player personnel director roles in the XFL and AAF, and some smaller roles with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, South Carolina, and played football, did Hinch at South Carolina as a running back in the day as well. So another player here turned scout in Hinch. Ramsey.
Key position running back.
Of course.
Running backs matter.
Ramsey's most recent work was with the Senior Bowl in the 2024 season. After 3 years with the Carolina Panthers as the assistant director of player personnel, he was a national scout for the Carolina Panthers before that. He also worked with the Seattle Seahawks as an area scout from 2012 to 2021 and was a pro personnel assistant from 2009 to 2012. So a lot of West Coast ties there for Ramsey, and more experience than I thought, actually. So earlier when I said that they weren't necessarily as experienced as Sarkisian, in the case of Ramsey, at the very least, I may have misspoken there. Ramsey with quite a bit of experience in the NFL, working with the Seahawks and the Panthers for over a decade of collective NFL experience.
What small scouting department? What are you talking about?
The Bengals don't often have to change what they're doing in the personnel department, but they have technically expanded the scouting department this offseason, James.
They have. And so they do deserve credit for that. We'll see how it impacts things, how it changes things. Being the astute journalist that I am, I should have asked Zach Taylor this yesterday, didn't. But that's okay, because he will talk again. This was not it was weird because Joe was back to back with Zach, and then Zach ended up going longer than Joe, which I was shocked by. But next time we talk to Zach, we'll have to talk about the scouting department. Maybe even, since we haven't talked to Duke or anyone, be like, hey, are you getting the Cordell Volson pay cut? Is that going to your potential contract extension next offseason, or how does that work, Zach?
Yeah. So. I mean, obviously the money is going somewhere. If it maybe is just going to pay the Blackburn family and the Brown family, well, no one will like to see that. That's what they did with Joe Mixon.
It's going to that Ja'Marr contract. Oh, wait. They already budgeted for that, so it's not that.
Or maybe the Trey Hendrickson contract. Maybe. Man. I mean, it wasn't very long ago we were talking about the Geno Stone renegotiated contract, and the takeaway there was you better spend the money. And
Ted Karras extension.
Sure, but like every one of these pay reductions they're doing, like there better be another end to that. And Trey Hendrickson pointed that out not too long ago.
Extension.
Whatever it is, like hopefully it's something that helps the team. Anyway, we've gone back in time. We're talking about things we were talking about before. Let's get to the flag football topic, shall we? Something that I know you're passionate about. You think you can beat out Ja'Marr Chase on the U.S. flag football team in 2028. The team can have one representative. Let's talk U.S. flag football to finish the show. Coming up next.
No, I don't think I could beat out Ja'Marr Chase for that spot, but doesn't mean I'm not willing to try. So Olympics, give me a call. I'll show up for the tryout. 2028 Summer Olympics are going to be pretty unique. They're in Los Angeles, and flag football is here. It's not only an Olympic sport, a bunch of different countries are going to be participating, but one player from each NFL team can represent their country. And so that's interesting with the international players as well, and how that plays out. But it also means that the Bengals have to compete against each other. Let's say Ja'Marr Chase and Joe Burrow want to represent Team USA. They're technically competing against each other, and that's going to matter in tryouts. Like, I hope that happens. 1, 2, give me like a Hard Knocks of that, like of the tryouts, like if there's a lot of NFLers that do it, like Brown from the AJ Brown from the Eagles, he said, it impacts training camp, and I don't want to hear it from the fans, so I'm not going to do it. So
Is that what he said?
Yeah. It really doesn't impact training camp from July 14th to July 30th. So it's a few days of camp, and if they change the schedule, it could impact it significantly if they move it up. But as of now, it's like a week of camp. Like, it wouldn't be the end of the world if your quarterback or your receiver, someone was playing flag football at a competitive level. I'm excited about this. I also am curious how many NFL players are truly going to do it. And I wonder if Joe, who is all about doing it, I wonder if he's going to be the best option at quarterback, because flag football is so unique. He's the most accurate option, but the run option, I think, is going to matter. How much does that matter? Does Ja'Marr want to do it? And then the other one is T. I think T would be really, really interesting on a flag football field.
I think it was the Ringers' Steven Ruiz, who I know many of you hold dear to your heart as Bengals fans, had T. Higgins as the Bengals representative, going for T. Higgins and Mike Evans for some red zone twin towers kind of weapons for the U.S. national team. I will point out that the United States has won 5 straight gold medals in flag football dating back to 2014 at the Flag Football World Championships, 2014, 2016, 2018, 21, and 24. Obviously, most notably led by Daryl Doucette, the quarterback. Daryl Hush Doucette. I don't know.
Did
where
you hear?
comes
Remember
from.
Him last year? Did you see him last year? Yeah, he basically was like, "Hey, I'm not giving up my spot for these bums, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow."
And Daryl Doucette is 5'7". That's what it takes height-wise to play quarterback in flag football, because there's not like there's an offensive line to see over. And more important, and this goes to the heart of the conversation here with Joe Burrow, it clearly has expressed multiple times his desire to play Olympic flag football, and just talked about his desire to grow the game internationally, to play internationally. And a lot of that has been, when asked about the Olympics, he wants to play in the Olympics. But is he the best player from the Bengals to fill that one slot per team on that U.S. roster, when instead you got Daryl Hush Doucette, but more seriously, the potential of a guy like Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray, or those very agile, shifty, fast quarterback options in the NFL who can also throw the ball really well as potential alternatives. It just takes me back to watching Joe Burrow be helpless with Kevontae Turpin blitzing him at the Pro Bowl. And he just doesn't have those quicks to deal with those kinds of players, where an NFL special teamer can have you dead to rights in flag football, and there's nothing you can do about it sometimes.
Yeah, I would have put Turpin in a blender, but in all seriousness, I thought about it. Kyler Murray could be the dude. Everyone's going to say Lamar. I think some will say Jaden Daniels. Obviously, prime Michael Vick doesn't exist. It would be him. But I wonder about Kyler Murray and if he would be in the mix there. And he's almost 5'7", so that's certainly someone that could be in the mix. But I think it's going to be fun, and I hope that there are real tryouts. Like the NBA Olympics, it's like tough. Like the high-end players that are NBA stars don't make the team. And don't play. Jason Tatum last year, it did not play much for the U.S. Olympic team. Jaylen Brown, who was NBA Finals MVP, was shocked when they picked his teammate over him. And so, like, will it be the same way early on? Like, people are comparing it to the Dream Team, so it's not a shock that I'm bringing that up. I don't think it's true Dream Team levels, but maybe it is. I think flag is so different. Like, I think you're going to see some of these flag guys, give them a run for their money and make the team. And I wonder how many you carry. So if it's like a 5-man team, 6-man team, you go in 3 deep at each spot, 3 quarterbacks, a bunch of receivers. I don't know.
I don't know how many players are on the roster. I guess that's probably something that we'll have to learn.
And maybe they'll just like say, oh, well, if Joe wants to be on the team, he can be on the team if there's no other Bengals that are are pushing for it. Maybe it's
like
that.
how many subs do you get?
Yeah.
The obvious pick is Ja'Marr Chase. If you're picking a Bengal for that kind of football format, you're telling me
Ja'Marr or T. I think T is really interesting at flag. I really do.
But like, why do you need a red zone weapon if Ja'Marr is just going to run by any other athlete in the world and just score on a go ball?
Oh, he's not a red zone weapon. He's an everything weapon. I mean, you just throw it
I
up.
know, but like,
you run 30 yards and I'm throwing it to you.
But you could also do that with Ja'Marr, who can just get behind anybody.
Sure, no doubt. And you have the yak part of it. And I do wonder for Joe and Ja'Marr, they break tackles. Mm-hmm. Like Kevontae Turpin in an NFL game probably doesn't tackle Joe like that. Like, it probably doesn't. Like, in Ja'Marr breaks tackles, but it's not like he doesn't get touched. And I do think there's a difference there. And so I wonder. I'm not saying it's something. Probably nothing. I think they're going to be really good at anything they do, for that matter. But it's something to keep in mind. I do also love the idea, like the competitive part of it. Can you imagine Justin Jefferson and Ja'Marr Chase competing for a spot on the U.S. Olympic team?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean, the wide receiver options are just so stacked for the USA.
I'm shocked Mike Evans was mentioned, because he's going to be old then. Like, he'll be my age. He's my age now.
Part of it is you only get one player per team, and so you have to go through figuring out which player you're taking from each team. But, the Malik Neighbors, like, go with a bunch of LSU guys, Malik Neighbors, Justin Jefferson, Ja'Marr Chase, and run those guys out of wide receiver. I mean, it sounds nasty. Like, who's defending that? Especially because all the NFL level DBs are also going to be on Team USA. I think it'll be really interesting, actually, to see how many, if any, NFL players end up on other national teams, because there aren't a ton of international players in the NFL. There are a few Canadians, I think. There are a few international players around, but the second team in the rankings over the last few years, and the other team that's consistently medaling the most, Mexico, Austria, and Denmark represented on the podium in the last few flag football world championships. So I wonder if there are any players in the NFL from those countries who would be on those national teams instead of the U.S. national team. That's always an interesting thing when we get to the Olympics and you see, the international NBA players on their respective home country teams. Yeah,
it is. Margus Hunt certainly going to make the tryout and go that route.
Yep.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda been Honey Badger. I still haven't let that go from the 2013 draft. You think it's time?
Long time ago, James.
You think it's time?
Sometimes
Joe Burrow wasn't even
things a little.
Joe Burrow was like a sophomore in high school then, maybe.
Who knows?
It was something like that.
We can do the math.
Sounds like sophomore. I think it's sophomore and junior, in that range. Yeah, I'm kind of excited for it. Maybe irrationally, I love the idea. Also, hey, Madden, you want to be unique and different? I have a flag football option by 2028. Just saying. Would be cool.
That would require Madden to develop something new, which is not exactly their forte. Sorry, we're not going to get into video game politics here at the end of Locked On Bengals. I think that's it. You have any other flag football thoughts you want to get out there before we wrap up?
No, I'm good. Feel great.
All right. Probably got a mailbag coming your way tomorrow, pending other Bengals news here to wrap up the week on Locked On Bengals. Deep in off-season program at this point. The Bengals start phase 3 next week. So you might have an opportunity to get those questions in for tomorrow's show. Keep an eye out on @LockedOnBengals on Twitter, or if you're part of the Subtext at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBengals, where the Locked On Bengals insiders play, you might be able to submit questions that way as well. Until next time, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.